Hey everybody, it's Boysen, Hodgson Communications and Marketing with the Mankind Project USA. And I'm excited to be back with Richard Biegel, who is the creator founder of mind.edu.
Mindedu.com.
.com. See, I've already messed up, and that's okay.
Okay.
That's good. Of mindedu.com. Richard and I spoke about a year and a half ago. He's an MKP guy, New Warrior Brother. We spoke some time ago about this project, this inspiration, this passion that he has, that he's turned into a life mission. And some developments have happened with mindedu.com, and I wanted to circle back. Richard, good to see you.
Oh, you as well. You as well. Thanks for having me, Boysen. Yeah, it's wonderful to be here. It's an exciting time for us. Oh my God, is it excited?
It really is. So I'm go back to the beginning a little bit. There's a 6.5 minute video. I'm just going to say, go watch that video. To all the guys out there, go watch that video to learn a little bit more about the history, the foundation. But you were just saying something about this idea birthed for you when your adult children were little. So go back to Montessori school and talk a little bit.
All right. And this is, yeah, so it is and I got to tell you, the 6.5 minute video, finally, that was take number, oh my God, like 103. It was so actually hard to tell the story because there had been some near death experiences that brought this to be, that finally out of frustration I filmed the whole story knowing we'd cut it back. It was 27 minutes. nobody's nobody's gonna watch 27 minutes, so we got it down to 6.5. But I'm pretty good at telling the story in less than 27 minutes, so let's go. I'll go fast. So I have two children who are in their mid-30s now, and just around the time they were born, I was in a near-fatal motorcycle accident. As a matter of fact, the doctors were pretty stunned. 75 feet through the air with no helmet. They were stunned that I even survived. And my spiritual belief at the time was that I was saved to be my children's father. So I threw myself into it. Parenting classes, Montessori, volunteered for school. And even then, I came to recognize, I have a very, very strong science background. I scored in like the top 1% in some high school test years ago. And as I dug into it, I realized that there was so much science that parents didn't know about, and critical, life, like changing, important science. And I was in commercial real estate, and I was working on some very large projects. If any of your listeners are familiar with the Forum Shops at Caesar's Palace, I was part of the team on the second phase. I mean, I've been involved in huge projects. So I was anticipated I was going to have a very significant net worth, and it was very clear what my charity would be to get this science out to parents. And kind of where it evolved into was the idea of a free pamphlet to be given to parents of newborns so it was brief enough that they would read it, and it would have like the big bullet points of things you need to know. Ultimately, it got the name, the operating manual. Then the Great Recession came, and it moved kind of to the side burner, the idea. And then the Great Recession took the whole stove. So there's that. And then I got blessed beyond belief, and became a daddy again of beautiful identical twin girls. And so now I'm back in this, and I'm again digging into the science, and was just blown away at how much more there was, and recent just awarenesses from all the new technology that can do non-invasive brain imaging and see how the brains are working in young children, and in a completely separate field in genetics, of epigenetics, which are switches that turn genes on and off based on experience, and came to realize that there was so much more out there that I didn't know, and all relatively recent. And then when the girls were about 2, I got health news that I didn't have much time left. There's almost every time. There's a gift that comes from that, and it's what's important.
Mm-hmm.
And it was my daughters, and I realized if I could get this science out there with the time I had left, that I could make the world a better place for them. Well, so that was 3 years ago. So fast forward, have been blessed twice more. The health news was a misdiagnosis.
Mm.
My grandparents lived on my grandmothers on both sides lived to their hundreds, so I'm around for a long time. And the other gift is that we have now done something that has never been done before, and it's like a head smacking moment every time I think about it. We've assembled for the first time ever the world's greatest researchers in early childhood development, in taking their science and putting it into brief, concise videos for parents, and it's free. So it's a massive mission, and it's what's extraordinary about it is just coming to know the science. If you ask a parent, if you give them just one wish for their child, everybody comes to the same place. It's to be happy. If you give them two more, pretty consistently, what's going to show up is for them to be healthy and for them to achieve their greatest potential. Mm. This we now know. I mean, this is how profound this science is. These new revelations, and it's probably. I'll use Jack Schoenhoff, who's the founding director. A quote from him: he's the founding director of the university-wide Center on the Developing Child at Harvard. If there's a pinnacle in the world, that's it. And there's this great quote where he says, in the old days, and I'm going to add this, like the old days, like 5 years ago, when we used to argue about nature versus nurture, that as a scientific question is dead. We now know that we are wired to be wired by experience, and those experiences happen in the earliest years of life. And literally, those experiences get wired into our brains and our bodies. And just how massive this impact is. So I'll give you one example. Some of your listeners might be aware of a new area of academic study for young children. It's called social emotional skills, teaching social emotional skills. And there was a meta-analysis. This is where a meta-analysis is where researchers look at other research that's been done, right? Find research that's similar in terms of how the research was done in terms of the outcome, the consequence, the type of research. That's the better way to describe it. And they looked at studies, over 200 studies that covered over 300,000 students from kindergarten through high school, and found that students who had engaged in social emotional programs had a 13-point academic gain in achievement. Now, that's social skills. There's another area we're the greatest researchers we've got, and I understand you're starting that class, the course that we've got up.
Yes.
And there's legends there. Absolutely. We got the researchers that most often opened the field and are world recognized. So here's this other set of skills called executive functions. And the way to describe executive functions are, Harvard describes executive functions as the brain's air traffic control center. It's taking in signals and input from all these different directions and making a decision about what to do. Dr. Adele Diamond, who has become a friend, and she opened the field of developmental cognitive neuroscience, effectively the study of executive functions. She's the world's foremost expert on it, recognized as one of the top 15 neuroscientists alive today. And she describes it as basically goal-directed behavior. You want to go grocery shopping, you want to get a PhD, those are the executive function skills you're employing. And there was a study that was done in Dunedin, New Zealand, where they started following over 1,000 children, and they followed them for 30 years, over 30 years now. They're now in the second generation. Mm-hmm. And what they found was one of the studying executive functions at age 3 predicted what we call the prison or the Princeton outcome. Children with lower executive function skills had more drug abuse, more interactions with the law, less chance of finishing college, more problems in their relationship, more interactions with the law, obviously overall lower quality of life versus the children that had higher executive functions that had the opposite of every one of those: higher incomes, better relationships, more education, better quality of life. And executive functions in a separate, Dr. Angela Duckworth has done a whole level of research on, some of your listeners may have heard of grit. She coined the phrase for grit. It is one of the executive functions. It's under the field of executive functions. And it accounts over twice as much variation as IQ from all the way through college. And separately, so that's in the brain. That's in the brain.
Yeah.
Separately, with respect to epigenetics and the impact on the genes and the body, the evidence is so profound that in 2015, UNESCO released a document to all 193 member nations worldwide titled Investing Against the Evidence. And essentially what it said was, what we know now about the research, investing for many of these adult illnesses of substance abuse, diabetes, heart disease, adult onset diabetes, obesity, spending that money on adults is too late. The money needs to be spent in the early years, the 0 to 6, 0 to 8 range, to be able to deal with those. That's where the money needs to be spent. It's just, and all of this is science that parents don't know.
Right.
I mean, this is extraordinary that this isn't known. Every parent on the planet should know this, which is why we created MindEDU and why it's free. That's why it's free. And they're brief, concise videos. And so we just launched last week, 2 weeks ago. It's been a haze since. We've only got about 30% of the content up that we've got now. We've over 90 videos. I think there's 30 some that are up. We're continuing to add content every day and getting the word out because when you think about it, so I mean, if it wasn't beautiful enough, let's get back to that first wish that you have for your child, to be happy. Then let's think about what your child is going to need going into this unknown 21st century, where in the words of Andreas Schleicher, he's the OECD Director of Education, literally this is the quote: "The world no longer pays you for what you know. Google knows everything. The world pays you for what you can do with what you know." Effectively, creativity. So here's the foundation to two of those sets of skills that I just talked about. And by the way, this is only part. We've got 11 different domains.
Yes.
Those are only 2 of the domains we've got.
Yes.
We got 9 others. I'm just talking about the 2 most profound ones. But the foundation to both social emotional skills and executive functions, there was an 80-year study, and if anybody watched TED Talks, they may have known this one because it's in the top 10, where they followed the 1938 sophomore class at Harvard. And there's a couple of guys kind of famous. One guy, Ben Bradley, Washington Post editor for 20 years. Another guy by the name of John F. Kennedy, that class. Then some years later, they added like 500 inner city men. And then some years later, they added the wives as well.
Yep.
And there were a lot of things that they were looking at, but the most fundamental thing that came out of it is what leads to a happy life. And it came down to one thing: relationships. And in a, if you will, completely separate field of study, it's 2,600 years old.
Right.
We now know how to see happiness in the brain. And the happiest people on the planet are Tibetan Buddhist monks. And Tibetan Buddhist monks will tell you the highest level of happiness is not from nirvana or becoming enlightened and the Buddha. No, it comes from the same conclusion that the Harvard study did. The foundation, compassion. The Harvard study those quality relationships where there's a foundation of compassion. The gift, the greatest gift, you want to give your child happiness comes from compassion. Now this is where it gets wonderful. Two of the most important skills when the IBM does this CC study where they interview the CEOs of innovative companies around the world. The 19th edition, there were two things that showed up on top: the ability to work together and creativity. And think about now for a moment, the ability to work together, clearly that's about relationships. That comes from that same foundation of compassion. Now let's think about creativity for a moment. The one thing that computers can't do, the one thing
right.
that humans are, this is our genius. I mean, when you think about creativity, this is how profound it is. Everything that we have around us right now, these computers, the phones, the carpet, the floors, the walls, the drywall, the ceiling, all of it, the clothes we're wearing, the fabric that's in the clothes, someone at some point in time, from going back to our caveman ancestors, creatively thought of that.
What if we did this?
Yeah. Right. So that is it is so critical. Now, let's think about where creativity comes from, because we know where it comes from. And it's actually one of the executive functions. But think about, let me just put you in the place where you have to be your most creative, but there's a massive obstacle to your creativity. Imagine being on stage in improv, where you spontaneously have to think of things. And imagine being in front of an audience of hecklers who are like shouting out things about everything you say and every attempt you make. How creative you are there versus an incredibly compassionate audience.
Yes.
The foundation of creativity, what has to be in the petri dish, is empathy and compassion. The very thing that we want for our child, that our children want, all of these skills. Think about a generation that learns these. They're more capable than any generation in history, and they're more compassionate. Mm-hmm. The average person you meet on the street 20 years from now has those characteristics. 40 years from now, those are our leaders. That's our mission. That's the mission we've got. Yeah.
See, all I had to do was ask one question to get the whole interview. Complete with citations, references, and verbatim quotes pulled out of your head.
I'm kind of passionate about it.
You're kind of passionate, and I seem to recall this from our last conversation as well. So I've been kind of tracking with MindEDU, and you went quiet for a little while, and a couple of weeks ago I got the new system has launched message and the new login information message, and was able to jump back in, and it's free.
Yes.
Most of this, I remember speaking to you before about the research base, right? So there's lots of bestsellers. I've got lots of bestsellers. I've got the Blink and the Grit and like all of the bestsellers that kind of reference the research in an obtuse way, some of the research in an obtuse way, but don't like dive in to like a systemic kind of look at this is what the research tells us step by step. And mindedu.com takes you right to it. So it's like, here, watch this video, here, do this little piece, here, review this, by the research.
Very people who did the research. Yeah, it's Carol Dweck and Angela Duckworth. We're chatting with them. They'll all eventually be here. Our goal is that this is eventually going to become the default website for parents and caregivers. Yeah.
To understand what we are doing. And if, as we're talking about childhood, I'm also kind of thinking of Peter Levine and Dan Siegel in terms of integration and plasticity. Yes. Yeah. So MKP, right. Like, what do? We do emotionally connective experiences to help men get back in touch with empathy and compassion. We help men build the relationship, not only inside myself. When you were talking about being on stage and trying to improv total creativity in front of an audience of hecklers, I was thinking to myself, yeah, that's basically my brain all the time. Right? That's right. So we help men get to a point where they're standing in their own minds in front of a supportive and empathic and compassionate audience, rather than the monkey mind of hecklers that we all self-judgment that we carry around with us.
So wait till you get to the part in the course about Christian meth. Have you gotten to Christian meth's work?
I have not yet. No.
Yeah. She opened the field of self-compassion. And as soon as I say it, I'm certain there's some guys out there that will respond the same. Mind you, I'm a guy's guy. I used to run Xterra triathlons. I spent 3 years in the Marine Corps. I go elk hunting on my own. A good day for me here in Las Vegas is 20. I don't go to the strip. I go 20 miles west of the strip out there in Red Rocks.
Out in the Red Rocks, yeah.
1,000-foot cliffs. And a good day for us used to be doing one of the 1,000-foot cliffs, getting off and doing another 600-foot cliff. That was a good day. You know, I'm kind of a guy's guy. Self-compassion is what the research shows is that coming from a place of self-compassion, you're much more likely to recognize and apologize. It's extraordinary for relationships, for where you have had a fault, and importantly, looking at yourself and being back to compassion, being compassionate about yourself and understanding the common humanity of it, that this is something that everyone experiences, and at the same time, you know, coming to love yourself as a human. I mean, this is the biggest lesson that many of us get, and it's one of the things I say in our FAQ that is about to go live, is trying to be the perfect parent. Think of the fail that you create in the relationship with your child and your child's mindset to be anything when it comes to being perfect about being human. We are imperfect.
Yes.
And if you try to, and you, that love, unconditional love for you as human as you are, complete with imperfections, and anything different is a life of misery searching for perfection that doesn't exist. And that applies to us too. It has to start there. If you don't start here, you can't in authenticity teach that to your child. So yes, sorry. As you can tell, if you bring up something, I'm likely to take it and run with it. I've been at this for 30 years, and it's over the last 3 years, I've effectively received a graduate level education in parenting from literally the greatest researchers on the planet. Yeah. What a gift. I wish I wish Spock were real and I could just do a mind dump with every parent on the planet. Our job would be done.
Would be much easier.
Yeah.
So this is really all I wanted, was to come back with you to see your passion again, hear more about mindedu.com, and to say it's live, it's free.
Yeah.
Go log in.
Right. Yeah. So I'm certain there's some people out that are like, okay, that's great. How you guys, somehow you guys have got to fund yourselves. So here's the good news.
Yeah.
There is, when I can still remember the night. This was like 4 days after I made after I had the health scare, and I made the decision to make a huge pivot. And I put my daughters to bed, and I was walking around in the house, not particularly thinking anything. And suddenly it just struck me that if we give this away to parents, which was, I mean, always that was from the beginning. It had to be, there's the price to change the world. There could be only one price to get the information out there. It had to be free. But I realized parents would want caregivers certified in this, and we could charge for the certification. Well, I didn't know that there's currently a business model out there, and that's represented by Udacity and Coursera, who are education platforms where they have college courses for free, and a certain subset will want to show that they passed the course either for their boss or for college. Those are billion-dollar companies. So we do have a pretty amazing business model and the potential for it to be huge. And I hope it is, because there's so much in the way of early childhood research that still needs to be done. And we're going to 10% of anything we make is going to go to that. So this has legs. This has legs to get big, to be translated into every language, and to get to the four corners of the earth.
Thank you. Thank you for living your mission. Thank you for putting it out there in the world. I'm grateful. I'm learning from it, and I know that millions of other people are going to learn from it also.
That's the goal. That's the goal. To make the world a good place. Yeah.
Mindedu.com, Richard Biegel, a man who, you know, is so understated and just really doesn't ever get into his passion.
I'll work on it, Boysen.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.